All right, folks, welcome back to Mike and Maurice's Mind Escape. We have episode number 26 today.
Yo,
Uh,
yo,
we're
yo.
we're going to talk about ancient Egyptian gods, Ba and Ka. And actually, we're very pleased to present John Hogan's back.
Hey guys, how you doing?
That's a representation of John Hogan right there. So
Yes,
let's
that's a good picture there, guys. I enjoy the view for today.
Yeah, I read your mind when I brought this thing up, huh?
Oh, definitely, definitely. Um, yeah, I'm more of a behind the scenes kind of guy, and today we have a representation of the god Horus, um, along with a few other symbols there, and yeah, it just struck me as a good picture today, even though there are many ways to show the god Horus, uh, the Egyptian god Horus. It very pleasing today, Kevin. Nice choice.
is he associated with the constellation Orion?
Well, it's a representation that all of ancient Egypt was uh, associated with the constellation Orion. One of the most clear pieces of evidence that's out there is that the pyramids that were built um, 5,000 years ago, which is, again, much longer than most ancient history that we can obtain. Um, and the pyramids were built with such an exacting nature of engineering. Uh, the massive structures at the base are perfectly aligned. East, the east wall is perfectly aligned east, west, south, north, and they are also placed, the three largest ones, in a particular order on the ground. And when you see the three stars in Orion's belt, um, from the bottom of the constellation as shown on the picture here, the no, not that picture, the one that's
I mean, all you got to do is let the guy speak, man, and it'll pop up.
put the picture put the picture here.
I was just going to show what you were saying about the alignment and how
Okay,
three stars of the belt align with how this one's offset.
right. Yep.
And that the basically now they're speculating that that's why the pyramids are 10 to 12, possibly even 12,000 years old, because that's when the constellation of Orion was perfectly aligned with the three pyramids.
Yep. Yeah, that's a nice piece of evidence there. What is it evidence of? Well, that there's an association that was so strong in their minds
So are these the
that
three
they
guys?
spent
Yeah, those are
massive
the three.
amounts of energy, be it human energy or some other energy that they had. Clearly, it took a huge amount of energy to create those pyramids exactly where they are. They had an exacting purpose. Um, I highly doubt it was a tomb. There are many other things that are more likely actually with the
Transmitter.
pyramids. So, anyways, yes, there's a strong association with the three stars in Orion's belt, and not just in ancient Egypt, but in other parts of the earth, there are alignments very similar shown. So, anyways,
So these are off right now because of procession.
Well, they're not. I mean, technically, obviously, they're a captured image of that alignment. But yeah, I
Right,
mean,
right,
they're not directly under that constellation. And it's a full. We talked about this too. A full processional cycle is like 25,900 years. So,
right,
it won't be back there for obviously how we don't even know how old the pyramids are. That's just speculation that
Right.
they're 10,000 or whatever. And then you got like Zawi Hawass and everything that, like, we've talked about too. The scholars just saying it's 2500 BC was the beginning, which they're not even the first. The Sumerians would have beat them to that whole societal infrastructure type stuff. But the thing I was going to bring up though is you were just explaining all that, but when I look at all this stuff, it seems like there's all these like mini cults and mini, like, when I read about the Egyptian gods, there's discrepancies in, like, almost like these people thought he was good, these other people thought he was bad. who do we believe, because we don't even know exactly who these people were or what exactly they were thinking. So how are we supposed to, decipher what was what, kind of,
Well, very good points, certainly, that you make. One other aspect of it is you have to consider that ancient Egypt, as depicted in modern times, can show anything from Pharaoh chasing Moses as they leave the desert or leave for the desert. And, in all of these instances, there's an enormous amount of time that passed. If you just look at the last 210 years and see how the United States has changed, and now you look back at history, and there's so many different stories, so many different ways of portraying what happened, so many different points of view that are now recorded, that we know for a fact that there's always been conflict, and there's always been good and bad, and what's perceived as good and bad. So um,
So what do you think that is? So, like, for instance, like we were talking about here, I'll pull this thing up about how the Satanists think, Thoth, who I thought was good. I've read these a lot of stuff on Thoth recently. I think he had an important role in ancient Egypt, but there's people that believe that he was associated with Seth. What is obviously Seth's not a savory character. I mean, he's considered basically the devil of the ancient Egyptian world.
well, again, those stories regarding the gods, in my mind, are simply um, variations of some kernel of truth that's there. And so
Right.
when
So
you
this
when
is
you
what I was
talk
talking
about
about.
200 years in our country, think about 2,000 years in human history, and then take that back even thousands more years. So you're talking about from the chariots being, chasing people 2,000 years earlier. The pyramids were still there, had been there, and all of the original. If these entities, these Egyptian gods, truly are based on uh, other human like life, um, then we have to know that they had these entities had a balance also of good and evil, and it's a struggle. It's a way to um, keep challenging humans to get better, to be stronger, and for the positive side of things. And when you do that, sometimes there are struggles, and that's okay. Struggles make us stronger, and so you have struggles by having conflict. And if everything was all wonderful and everything was perfect, then humans wouldn't push themselves. We would be relaxing all day long, enjoying the sun or whatever it is we like to do. And we wouldn't have to worry about clothing, feeding, nourishment, anything like
Mhm.
that, because we would have everything we want. And so at that point, you know, um, that's humans inherently know that that's not truly attainable, doesn't seem truly attainable, because what would be the point? There would be no point to all this if that's all it was leading to. So the point seems to be that as life continues on to another plane after this world, and our souls are um, being wanted by the universe, and we continue on with some sort of conscious cognitive life in a soul, then that's a big draw. And it should be a strong motivator. So why do even good people do seemingly bad things sometimes or make bad decisions? And
I think that's our lower nature. I think that's our animalistic side. Like, if we have this
so there's
divine
always a
spark,
challenge to get
you know.
better, and we will continue to get better. Played the bad guy role. He wasn't originally bad in the most ancient writings that we can find, which is where I put the most truth. And as thousands of years went on, the Egyptian gods, the stories of them, and all that, morphed into something to whatever it is today that we understand it to be. But like anything else, sometimes the beginnings of things are, the true nature, and sometimes we grow and get stronger, but you know, sometimes there needs to be that conflict. And so Set originally was part of the God family. They have a tree, a family tree. And, I was telling Kevin when I was coming on here today that um, life's been busy. I haven't had a lot of time to, you know, practice up and go through my memory banks on all the pieces of information I've come across regarding the Egyptian gods. But one thing I do know is there's basics to their societal structure as portrayed to what we as humans want and are trying to achieve in terms of society. And, where we don't have, um, the far side of the spectrum of evil around us, and we do have um, positive goals that understand as much as they can the true nature of the universe, which seems to be pushing everything into a positive direction. And the only way to get that positive direction strength is to offer it some resistance. And playing the negative role can be real easy for humans. Um,
But isn't that part of the cycle? Like, isn't that
so
so?
Set was part of the family, and then he was jealous.
He was the
Um,
scapegoat.
he ended up being jealous. There's many different ways to look it up for the details about why he was jealous. But so jealousy led him to trick uh, Osiris and ended up killing him. There's many stories about that too. You could say, well, I heard it was this and I heard it was that. And again, you're talking about a story that transcended thousands and thousands of years. And even at that, it's probably as accurate as it can be uh, on what they believed. So if humans back then were so good at making up these stories and being so consistent, at least they made them up based on things that sure seemed to be real life. And so they talk about how the gods um, who started uh, human life on Earth, um, you know, they have
Wasn't that Pita that was the creator god?
yes, and I think it's Nut and
Yeah.
Get, Nut and
Yep.
Get, I think. Um, we're next in the family tree, and the gods were born of other gods from that point down, and um, so when you
We're talking
take
about
these
these
when you
gods, though. Like, my question
when
would
you
be,
take these things back to its original state and say, okay, there were beings that started life on Earth. Well, even those beings understood that there was one universal force, I guess, to borrow it from a movie, but uh, a way of connecting everything, and it does go back to a singularity, seemingly. And so, when you consider all of that, there's no reason why any other entity in the universe could exist that couldn't start life on another planet. And so, you know, these things are possible in the human imagination. And back then, they had a story to tell that people could understand. So, is their family like that? Well, no, because there are things that can't really be translated. Like, you know, uh, this is an offspring of a brother and sister. And people, oh my gosh, but if you consider
there's that
that
still
in their
exists.
world,
It's not that
that's
weird.
that's all there was, right?
Lannisters.
So these stories go back, and you have good and evil. You have structure of family that have to figure things out. There's always a power struggle, um, and so these gods that the Egyptian called them, because what else could you call them?
Do you think they
Especially
were gods, or do you think they were, like, obviously we could
when
speculate all day of what they
no,
actually were, but do you think they were real enlightened beings that were just
yes,
superior in
of
thinking and
course,
technology?
no question,
Or, obviously
no,
there's the show
no
on,
more,
we all know the show on History Channel, Ancient
no more.
Aliens.
No, it's either based on higher intelligence than we have been able to attain yet through generations that
But
are moving.
couldn't it just be looked at like an Einstein type? If you threw an Einstein and or a Tesla in a time like that, wouldn't you be revered as a god because you were so much smarter than these Neanderthalish type? Not Neanderthalish, but they weren't as advanced as people are perceived to be as today
Well,
as a
well,
whole.
sure, that could be the case. And all you really though go back to is okay, then who was the first Einstein type person,
Yeah,
and how did he get here?
right.
Right. So,
Yeah, but then you could trust. You could track it back because it'd be like you have to breed with this because we want your genes
so
to
where did
flow
that
through.
come from?
That's
Right.
true. That's
Just
true.
to
So
touch
of
though,
course
Well, it's always where did it come from, man.
of
It goes
course we're
keeps going
talking
back and
about
back. God damn it.
physical entities, beings that humans even had a hard time trying to represent, and they were so important they carved them into stone in such a manner and in such a place that the same carvings that were done 5,000 years ago still exist. And these carvings clearly show things happening with strange human kind of like things, and their personalities were represented as an animal because you wouldn't be able to make those carvings into such a way that you could see the features on somebody's face well enough to know what they look like. Okay,
hmm
and they weren't trying to represent exactly what they were looking like. They were trying to represent what they meant, what they represented in the big picture. And so, you have a mother, father like set of beings that you have to represent, right? And you could represent it in a way that everybody would always know what you're talking about and who you're talking about because they're represented in such a way. So when they show these gods and these pictures and these hieroglyphs, and you see an animal head on top of a person, they're basically saying, I think those people look like us. And the representation is there's no question that that is Osiris. There's no question that that is Hathor. There's no question that's Isis. All these
hmm
gods had their own representation of an animal, usually, or some type of bird. And it wasn't to say that they actually had, yes, Hathor, is she on there?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So she's got the cow horns. So actually, you look at any one of them, and they distinguish themselves differently enough so that you know precisely who they're talking about. So not only did these beings' names live on in whatever form they are today, but their names lived on, and it was represented by shapes that could always be known as that. There's no question. No matter how you interpret the hieroglyphs, and you want to say every story that we see is told here is wrong, and that's not about this and that's not about that, there's no question that the characters are all known, and you
Okay.
can see
I,
these are all different people.
I got a
And
couple questions here, and I want to touch on something you said a few minutes
so
ago.
you've got good guys and bad guys, and jealous people, and people that love people enough to put them back together. I mean, there's all sorts of stories,
You
and
said
they
you
take
said
different. Go ahead.
you said that we're all moving in a positive direction. You said that,
No, I said we're
or
trying
we're
to.
trying to move in a positive direction. From everything I've learned and understood, I think that's true, but only because of where we are in this cycle, this processional cycle, which they truly based almost everything on, that, the stars, obviously. But that we were coming out of, if you look at it, it's like a big circle. There's the golden age and silver age and bronze age, and it goes all through the things, and there's like a dipping point. So like once you get to a certain point, human nature is at a low point, like what you want to call like the dark ages, or points throughout time where there wasn't any knowledge or light or any of that spread throughout the world. And then you have points too where there's an uplift, like the ancient Greeks and ancient Egyptians during that time, that was considered the golden age. So there was a lot of learning, there was a lot of invention, creation, all that kind of stuff going on. And right now, as part of that cycle where we are now past the precipice of the downfall and now on the back of the upswing here. So I do believe what you're saying is true, but only in a secular pattern, if you will, of that whole system.
Well,
the other, I mean, what do you think about? Do you think that no? Do you think that that's not really the way things work?
well, no, you kind of made my own point that I was making earlier, and that is through all the cycles of human history, and yes, we have gone through them. One just has to know some history of humans to know there were cycles where times were good, times were bad, and most of the times when things got really bad, um, it was humans' own decisions that got them to a low point. But even if they were decisions they didn't know they were making, like spreading disease or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, but humans figured it out before it was too late and took an upturn, and then, you get knocked back down again. Again, that goes to the point of um, getting stronger and having to have conflict for that to happen. And
Mm-hmm.
humans are better, stronger, um, as a group, as a whole, when things are based on common goals towards saving each other from disaster. I mean, that's a whether that disaster is you know something that takes the lives of X number of people versus Y number of people. It's not about that. I'm talking about massive human suffering based
Mm-hmm.
on something that challenges humans' will to survive, to live. And even back then, if this group came here with the specific purpose of um, setting off a chain reaction where humans are able to obtain a way of living that we have today, where we change everything around us to suit our needs, where some animals only have that basic ability to do that. We look at them and say, "Hey, look, it's amazing. This fish does this. It builds its own
Mm-hmm.
little nest, and fools other creatures." And so we see that and we're amazed by it. But humans do that on a grand scale with a lot of things, um, and we are able to again achieve what we achieve. So if we believe that those group of ancient Egyptian gods truly represent living entities, and they did set off a chain reaction where humans are where we are today, first of all, that's a good thing, because what would it mean if they didn't? So, and they have, if you look at it, the same basic personality structures that we have today. Again, where you have a mother, father, you have siblings. There's sibling fighting, to the point of who's taking over, who's doing what. Um, you know, Jealousy, rage, murder, uh, come back around, love, bodies get put back together. Children are born, and Horus is born, and he's seen as a um, you know, he has all the abilities that humans would want and to be able to do with their abilities.
So that's like a
And he
Jesus
was,
type.
yeah, maybe less,
Was
less.
Osiris the Jesus?
Jesus was pure, or is represented by the stories and the writings. Jesus is seen as pure love, and he wasn't always that, obviously, because he didn't really attain any sort of prominence until the last 3 years of his life. So prior to that, very little is known or at least shared with um, about all that time. A couple times it's mentioned. So regardless of whether you believe in Jesus or not, regardless of whether you believe in God or not, um, understand that there is writings about a specific person that did live, did exist, and he basically went pure love with everything and tried to show the power of that, while at the same time not using the power for anything for himself ever. And so, um, very interesting role there. So, something that most humans have difficulty even wrapping their arms or their head, their thoughts around the fact that somebody could be that way. And if somebody were walking around being that way today, a lot of people try to be, but if somebody truly were doing the things that he's been credited with, um, he'd be a huge celebrity. And, you know, and then that changes everything as well. So,
John Travolta.
yeah.
Okay,
So you have all these stories with these gods. They're represented, their personalities are represented as animals on top of their heads. Um, they had all this, again, the same things that humans have, and there's this conflict. So there's conflict, there's fighting, there's love, there's getting, patching things up. But in the long run, no one side can win.
mhm.
Okay, and because of
Well, that's the
that,
balance.
that's right, exactly the balance.
But here's the thing too. A couple things I want to touch on. I like the Jesus and God thing that you were saying, but I also want to touch on something else, which is I've been learning a lot about, like you were saying, evil and what is evil. Evil, I think, is just error. I think it's I mean, obviously, there's people that will deliberately go out of their way and do terrible things, and those people, I guess, you could consider them evil. That have, where the
That's
psychopaths, or but
that
that could
that
even
is
be a
what I'm
mental,
talking about.
disorder too. So it's not necessarily their choice at all times in that scenario. But
I know.
um, the thing I just wanted to get out was um, when you're talking about evil in what you're saying, like how it's, I think when we look at these stories, it almost seems like um, these beings were just rebellious or going against the grain. I mean, you could consider a lot of people and a lot of, you could, if that was the case, you could consider, maybe Tesla. Um,
I
you
guess
could,
if somebody wanted to kill me, I'd want to be out of their way. So
sure.
yeah, definitely out of their way. So
So, but yeah, so I just think
so
that's more like
there's
rebellion based than it is any. Obviously, if you're going against the grain, it can considered to be evil or to be wrong or whatever you want to call that. But
I call it drawing upon a power that we all have, and that is to tap into the the negative side of things and understand that presented in such a way, yelling at somebody could be very intimidating and very powerful. And that's, and you can berate somebody and you can use every bit of knowledge you have and throw it right back at somebody. If you know someone well enough, then we've all done things that we're not proud of. And we learn from those things if they matter to us, and we see
mhm,
how our decisions affect those around us. And you know but yes, there's always been personality types that challenge a lot of things, and sometimes challenging things is real easy to do. And you know but again, the that's all part of the balance. And the bigger picture tells me that as powerful as tapping into the negative is, it leads nowhere. And, you know, it's very temporary. And the universe is much bigger than anything going on here on Earth on a day to day basis. And so everything plays out in the long run, not the short run.
right.
Um, and so we'll see what happens. But yep, cycles are all there. Humans have cycled up and down, and but constantly moving forward. And so we'll see what happens.
To touch base on the God and Jesus thing that you were talking about, do you look at right here with the why is Osiris in Isis? This is going to be a multifaceted question, but Osiris and Isis are, you know, the predominant gods that are considered to be like the good gods or whatever. But then you have this little PETA guy that was supposedly created, you know, life, and he's like always depicted as small or not as important or whatever. But then you have Osiris. But then when I looked into Osiris, the green represents, he's always pictured as green skinned, which represents rebirth, and resurrection, and, you know, like regrowing of you know, vegetation and stuff like that. So you could look at Osiris, I guess, technically like Jesus, if he was resurrected and he was considered to be like the good God of back then. Some people even say that that's where a lot of that stuff comes from in the Bible. Not that Jesus wasn't real, but that there had been other similar,
Well, and
you know.
in most of the stories, and again, you take the ones that go as far back as you can determine, and the first uh, stories have probably a better chance of being more correct than. So there's many ways to tell stories, but yes, Osiris was killed and was resurrected based on Isis resurrecting him, putting the pieces back together. That Set had destroyed Osiris after killing him, and Osiris did come back temporarily. And even though the only piece of him that was missing was his penis,
I read,
um,
yeah, I read that, and there was actually
What the fuck?
they still managed to have a child, and that child
he sold
is
that gold. Yeah, didn't she make it golden Isis, and then he gave
Horus
her,
was their child.
yeah.
So
Get your dick cut off, get
That
a
sounds.
gold one, create a baby, a god baby.
yep. So how do we interpret that? You know, why does the specific acts of the body being cut up and reassembled and reanimated, or however they were, you know, why does that seem so, you know, both fascinating and unrealistic at the same time? And it seems simpleton. But you're right, the stories of greatness seem to come from dying, coming back for a short time, having the greatest impact in that short time.
Right.
And because that is the same as a Jesus story, right?
Well, there's a creator god and then his
He was
son, and then his
destroyed,
son's resurrected.
came back for a
Yeah.
short period of time, had a huge impact on those around him in such a way that the story continued on. And stories can be true. Stories can be, you know, based on truths. So a lot of times the details don't matter as much as, okay, here's the theme of the story.
Right.
You know, this is what happened. This this being who we're going to show, just like you said, it's always shown in green, and we know that that means this or that. Okay,
Right.
that's the whole point. Okay, these you have to picture these as human people, and they're shown that way so that you always know who the person is in the story and what they meant. And if you give something a name, then that really that's when it comes to life for humans in our mind. We now have a name for something, so we picture something and we draw upon all the connections that come around when we say something like cheeseburger. Okay, you
Mm-hmm.
picture a cheeseburger, you've eaten a cheeseburger, you like a cheeseburger, and so you see a picture of a cheeseburger, you know right away it's a cheeseburger. Okay,
But we've all
so
agreed on that with
you
our consciousness.
right, so you see a picture of, you know, Set, and you say, ooh, he's the bad guy. Just look at him too.
Mm-hmm.
He's the only one that's not based on a real animal.
Right.
it's
It
some,
looks like an anteater.
Yeah,
It
to
looks
me.
like a ibis
combination.
jackal
Yeah,
or
it's a combination of
yeah.
things. And so why is how did that come about? Until you realize, yeah, he's the bad guy. It's really hard to even we have given him a name and a picture so weird that it's creepy. So we say, oh, we don't want to be that guy. Who wants to be the bad guy? Well, some people do like to be the bad guy because they know there's power. Oh, it's me against everybody else, and look what I can do.
Right,
So
right.
these are all human capabilities, all human emotions, all you know decisions that humans make based on these things. So this is a way of trying to teach humans. You have good, you have the bad, you have people that can do this really great, some people that can do that really great. This guy was awesome, you know, uh, on and on, right? So you have
Right.
all these depictions, and we have given them a name. Okay, so to me, when someone says Horus, young king, not even young, but ruled over everything in a fair manner, was probably one of the more important role models in terms of what the stories that he was supposed to have done. Um, so everybody wanted to be, Horace. So you think all the good guy, bad guy stories,
Right.
and when you're kids playing with people, and I want to be Superman, I want to be Batman, I want to be this guy, that guy, and they were all
And you wanted to be Horus.
good entities, good entities that were good for humans to be looked at as if we can follow that route, we're doing all right. And so that's his representation. So a lot of good things, the Eye of Horus, the widget um, symbol there.
So why
A lot
though?
of
Why is
positive things that
the
came about.
hypothalamus? Why is the eye of God no associated with Horus if he wasn't the actual creator God? Do you think?
Um, I don't think that matters. Again, that's a level of detail. What does it matter that there were these other entities and him?
Well, I mean, I guess my question is this. Okay, so through the scope of modern day society, we're always trying to get to the root of things. We're always trying to get to the root, the root, the root. Who's the real? Where do we come from? Who's the
None of
creator
these
God?
people.
But what I'm saying is, um, I think there is an association when people see that symbol,
Well,
the all-seeing eye of God.
after thousands of years, literally thousands of years of their beliefs on uh, human creation and where humans came from, because we've been questioning that since the dawn of mankind and womankind.
Right.
um, you know, but all of them are representative pieces of our personalities, what we can, what we can, what we want to be, who we are, what we don't want to be. And so all of these are put together is God.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when they say, oh, this was a brother or sister, not in the way that we consider brother or sister. It was probably more of a way to show a relationship that existed, but you know, not
Yeah.
not the same as an actual brother sister for humans. So, because there was no other way to describe it to humans, we didn't.
Right.
So there's two different entities there that came together, and as a result of their combining their DNA, their genes, they come up with Horus, and uh, so he was a good guy, and then he actually went after his uncle Set, who uh, was the one who had killed and destroyed Osiris to begin with. So
Cut his penis off.
again, the struggle between good and bad went on, and so
But
yeah,
look at that sheet though. Like look at all most have um animal heads, and then you see Osiris and Isis, and they look like normal human beings.
well, they are shown as um, wearing the crowns.
Uh-huh.
So the other, like Hathor with the sun disk in the cow horns,
Uh-huh.
that's a pretty easy one to show, but it doesn't look like a crown, does
It
it?
looks like the Eye of Sauron or something.
Whereas, and all the other headgear look different. It's clear that Osiris was wearing a crown.
Right.
So, was he more powerful? Was he this or that? Well, we depict him as that. Humans have depicted him as that. And
Ancient alien theorists say yes. I look, all this shit's fascinating. We could continue with every single one of these gods for time and time again here.
Yeah, I want to
but,
look into him. I want to figure more out about this beetle guy.
um,
I don't even know how to pronounce half these names. This
But-
guy.
let's get into Ba and Ka, because I find that to be super interesting and relevant to today's quest for what is consciousness. What are we doing here? What is all this about? I believe that the ancient Egyptians had some pieces of the puzzle that we still can't figure out. So why don't you?
I don't know if we can't figure it out. I think that whatever one's imagination can show is a possibility of what the truth of the universe is. So the Ba and Ka, were a simplistic way to try and explain that, yes, the humans have a soul, and that soul is based on your experiences and your decisions and what you've been able to do with your own soul. And so there's separate things there, and it's hard to draw an analogy. It's so hard to draw an analogy that the analogy that ancient humans drew to try and explain the Ba and Ka became, the story of human death, a separation of your soul from your body, and a separation of your soul from certain parts of your body that included maybe things like your personality and your likes of this and your dislikes of that, and the individual things that made you you as opposed to someone else. Okay, so I know you're putting something up there. I haven't given
No, it's just saying
much thought in a long time.
It's
so,
exactly what you're saying. Ba is like your personality. Ka is more like your
right,
essence,
so,
like what gives you your life.
So, one analogy that is probably pretty bad, but because again, it's the story of what it is, the specifics of the story don't really matter. It's the theme or point of the stories. And these ancient stories were so important that humans somehow have wanted to carry on forever and ever, that these entities made decisions that showed that humans are capable of more than where they were at that point in existence. And what does that mean? I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out. But
That's
I
the
know
only reason why we had you
more...
on was that question. So,
well, so if you think of the Ka or your soul as you're a computer, okay? So every human has the same basic parts, or most do. And there are exceptions to everything. On an individual level, there's exceptions to just about everything in all of us. So your soul is the computer. Your Ba would be all of the software that you have on your computer, all of the programs, documents, and pictures you have on your computer right now, right? So any one of us was an HP computer or a Dell computer, or pick whatever brand you want, because each of you already have. Most of you, well, everybody out there with a podcast has a computer, even if it's just your cell
Right.
phone. That's still a computer capable of a lot of processing. So you're the computer, and the software is what you're running today. And it's part of your personality, right? So there's an analogy there. So your soul is your computer, the vessel that contains everything, and all its pieces and parts, and computer chips and drives and plugs and screens and everything.
Right.
So that's that. And the Ba is more like the software and the pictures and all the details of day-to-day life that are there. And Egyptians tried to say that, you know, one day the computer will be reset for a different reason, and maybe parts of what you were will still be in there, and your experiences summed up will mean something, in a way that will progress whatever the soul becomes after it leaves our body.
Right.
So um, the Ba and the Ka, computer software, uh,
So you think the
day
Ba?
to day life for the most part, for most entities, probably be again summed up in some equation, and then you move on. Does that mean that you won't remember that you're Kevin or Maurice or Joe or Sam or
Right.
Michael or John, right? So, but does that matter? We don't know. Our
Do
our
you know?
computer gets reset into something else, and holy shit, I'm sure it's going to be better. Why would it not be? You know. So
Do you think
yeah.
the Ba, though, the Ba is considered what would be what moves on, like your soul or your spirit, whatever moves on to the next realm would be the Ba, your
Well,
personality.
you're so you're saying the soul doesn't continue on.
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, okay, so the Ka
No,
is your vital essence,
they separate. The ancient Egyptians separated those, and it became a secular thing where, um, at night the Ba would leave the Ka and
Okay.
fly away and come back around in the morning to rejoin the Ka.
Right, that's what I'm saying. But when
So
you
that
die, your Ba leaves your Ka for good, is what I'm saying.
are you reading off that sheet? What does it say?
No, I mean, this is just what I this is just what I'm that this the sheet this is actually pulling from Wikipedia, but and
It's
who
called
knows how
Egyptian for Dummies.
who he actually knows if that's even correct. But just from everything I've read and stuff too, the Ka, like this is saying it's your vital essence, and it's saying
Yeah.
you keep it up through food and drink. So that would mean to me that that's like your motor for your actual physical body, like what you were saying, the computer, and that the Ba is the software, if you will, that like when you dream, that's where you go, or when you die, that's where you go. It's like the next level or next realm. That's what I'm interpreting from it, though. I may be wrong. So I'm asking.
Well, that what you just read is more of the symptom of trying to explain something, in ways that people could understand.
Right.
So, right now, the way I would interpret the Ka is it's similar in what you just read, where the Ka leaves the body. Okay, so if the Ka is leaving the body, that means the vessel was the body and not the Ka.
Gotcha.
So the Ka leaves the body. Boom. Now you have a separation between the body and the soul. So the soul is the computer that moves on.
Okay.
The Ba is the software of the computer, and all the pictures and all the words you typed and all the things you collected on your computer, the websites you visited, the knowledge you've gained, everything you have stored in your computer. I mean, Michael, do you have software on your computer that I don't have on mine?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, when you die, wouldn't that get wiped? I mean,
Right.
based on
Right. That's the Ba, not the Ka.
Okay. So you're saying the Ka is actually your soul or your spirit, and the Ba is just the the things that you're known for right here, right now, that are a collective
Correct.
conscious experience that you may not have in the next realm because it's not your
That's
true
correct.
essence. Okay.
That's right.
Gotcha.
I think the sum of what you are today is an inaccurate kind of statement, but best simplified for most people to understand. So the sum of who you are today would be more, I think, like some long mathematic equation. And there'll be strings of that equation that are based on your soul's day-to-day activity here on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And you take all that, you become an equation in a way. And that's the sum of you at that point. Okay.
Right.
No different than you lived for a year of your entire life where you have no memory, no recollection of any specific item on any specific day. We all have that. It's called being a baby.
Yep.
You're
Or
born.
fish tour.
When you're born and you live out your first year of life, nobody, not one human, can remember any of those days. We can imagine what it was like, especially if you have kids. You sit there and sometimes you look at them and say, okay, wow, I was once that. But
Right.
but so in that manner, we still had a soul, we still had a personality. It wasn't based on many experiences yet, but you still had a personality. Every baby has a personality. Ask any person that's had more than one child in their lives. Okay. Even as a
Right.
baby, oh, because you hear the stories. Oh, so and so was the worst baby, and so and so is the best baby, not in their personality of who they really became, but they had their own personality, you know.
Right.
And just because some babies might be really picky about temperature and get really crabby, doesn't mean that they're a bad person. It just means that they're very specific about that specific kind of thing. And it's very easy to see why they have a strong feeling about something. So that's an interesting picture there you put up.
Yeah,
Do
that
you
must
think?
be new.
Do you think? So what you're saying makes a lot of sense. I agree with it. When we're talking about how we were just talking about you get wiped or your personality or whatever, um, in terms of like we've all read into the Urantia papers a little bit. Um, not to get off topic, but that talks about how our personality is what survives. So, but it does say that whatever knowledge or like material or physical type stuff gets wiped in the next realm if you make it that far. Um, if you're a piece of shit, you might cease to exist. But I guess my
Well, if it
question.
really is a continuation of life here on Earth in some way, shape, or form, even if it's a small part or a large part. But even if it in any way, shape, or form is a continuation of human life here on Earth, that means that human life here on Earth is designed to be preparing ourselves for something else. And if we are preparing ourselves for something else and for extraordinary abilities, extraordinary thoughts, and extraordinary things that go on in human history, those people that we know of, including ancient people that they were called gods and had these funny names and were represented by animals, including all of that. If that's all preparation for something, and we're trying to emulate something so that our soul lives on and we do extraordinary things, whether anybody knows about it or not, the universe would know. The universe would know if you were alone, far away from trouble, and somehow saved a life and the person went on their way. You you may or may not tell the story, depending on who you are and what your personality is, but that didn't mean that you didn't do something extraordinary.
Right.
And you could have had a huge effect, especially if that person went on to be important or that person went on to have kids that were important or so on and so on. So are those things recorded? Do those things move on? Probably. They probably are specifically noted. And so parts of your personality can live on.
Right.
Maybe all of it can. Who knows? Okay, but I'm prepared for any of it. I
Well,
hope.
I mean, I think today we're all caught in the material, or, we have to be. I mean, you can't live your life and not be attached to the material world in some aspect, or else if I went on a little binge like 5 months ago of just knowledge and just reading and information, truth, just all sorts of different shit. And then it gets to the point where it's like, I'm, you know, like a fucking recluse doing all this shit. I got to figure that, I got to get back in the game, So, in terms of that, I think that you have to have this balance, of material life, being able to provide for your family, or if you've got kids, or, balance everything out, work,
Well,
this,
of
that, the
course,
other. So like
no question
there's,
about it.
yeah, there's that. And I think you and I have talked about that too. But then there's also this piece, of at least me. I find it shocking at how many people don't care about it. Doesn't forget ancient Egypt. People don't care about where we come from. They don't want to ask the questions. It's convenient for them to just go about their lives like an ant, part of a colony, like just doing their job, just getting it done. I can't live my life like that. I can't. It's like this riddle that's just haunting me in the face every day, where it's like, how can people go through life and just not um, it's gotten to the point too where, you know, um, I get frustrated with people sometimes because it's like, you're worried about that and you don't even care about this. So, I mean, maybe that's just me, but it's like, we're living in kind of like a bizarro world right now where half the people are thirsty for knowledge and want to figure stuff out. And then half the people, only care about how big Kim Kardashian's, ass has gotten the last couple of years or whatever.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know. That was my little spiel.
Yeah, it's words. It's the last thought by Michael.
Yeah, we'll wrap it up on that note, and we'll have John Hogan back again. This guy's a fountain of knowledge. So, um,
Yeah, good to be here, guys. Hope any of it made a little bit of sense. Not sure.
made a lot of sense.
I,
I learned a
me
lot, and I
too.
already knew a lot about it.
Yeah, I learned a lot too. I
It's a
just kind of
personal
sat back and
journey.
listened.
It's a personal journey, for all of us. As again, as individuals, we are all vastly different from each other. When we come together as a group and we're grouped together in groups of this or that or whatnot, then similarities are developed. But we're not talking about that. At an individual level, humans are a wide variety, a wide range of unique things that make us unique people, and we do have the opportunity to take all that uh, good stuff and contribute to the universe even after our bodies here on Earth are no longer living. So,
Do you think if you don't reach this enlightenment or this track of knowledge or thirst or whatever, do you think you're destined to come back again and do it until that's something I've been struggling with is
no, I don't think so. I think that
okay.
the universe has use for all of it, and
Yeah, but what I'm saying is to get to another plane, like let's say I'm not saying that knowledge or truth or what, like obviously a lot of stuff's
no, I
subjective, and I'm saying in terms of, let's say there is a reincarnation or your soul gets recycled, or there's proof in lots of different religions that things like that have occurred. There's even been weird circumstances where kids have been incarnated into bodies with souls of people that were in wars that knew exact specifications of planes and times and
yeah,
days and all sorts of stuff. So
I'm not saying that's not possible. In fact, again, we've talked about hell and non-existence and whatnot.
right,
I know we
it's
have.
annihilation, which you just cease to exist. And if you're too attached to the material world, you will perish with the material world.
So, so if we think about that, and then we think about how humans act and react when being judged or having to judge, um, which we do all the time, every day, all day long, with people, with situations, with our actions. What are we doing with this moment in time? And a lot of us um, like to try and improve things around us, improve ourselves, um, improve by improving ourselves. we improve humanity. And so,
Agreed.
if we're truly believe that the superior beings would judge us even better than we're able to judge ourselves, then I would imagine that uh, if you aren't contributing enough to get to move on, and you haven't been evil where it's a clear no thank you, then there's got to be something in the middle. And humans have tried to, oh, it's purgatory, it's this or that, the other thing. I don't think it really matters what it really is, whether it's your exact memories come back as someone else or whatnot. I think that you get to cycle around maybe one more time. And is that true? Do I really believe that in reincarnation people will take that and say, oh yeah, you must? No, I'm saying it's a possibility.
Yeah.
There's so many possibilities, but whatever we specifically say or want to believe and use our imagination to say it's purgatory or it's reincarnation or it's this, I don't think any of that really matters. What matters is, you know, you're possibly given another chance. What does that mean? I don't know. But everybody seems to understand really what it means. It means you're given another chance.
Right.
Okay? So how does that happen? How does it work? I don't know. Is it a possibility? Sure. So just like a lot of
Interesting.
things.
Very interesting. All right, we'll get you on next time and maybe talk about the Urantia papers and some extra planetary phenomenon.
Crazy.
You guys know, whenever you want to talk about anything, I'm more than willing to talk about something.
Well, you better not say that because you'll be on this motherfucker every day. But yeah, thank you for coming on.
I wouldn't have time to try and build my own ka and ba or
we don't
or
Yes.
whatever.
I heard I was set, so I don't really give a fuck about that. So.
Well, maybe you played that role here or there, but you're far from
No.
being represented as that goofy looking thing. So
Yeah. Anteater.
The jackal ibis.
yeah. So anyways, good talking to you guys. See
All
you
right.
soon.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right,
Peace.
you got it.
See
Bye.
ya.